It was a Tuesday morning when I first heard the sound. Sharp, metallic, and quick, like a squeal that disappeared before you could pin it down. I was pulling into our driveway in Phoenix, Arizona, the sun already cooking the concrete at just past 9 a.m. My wife, Emily, was sitting on the porch, sipping iced coffee, her auburn hair twisted into a lazy bun. She looked up and smiled at me the way she always did, or so I thought. "Did you hear that?" I asked, shutting the truck door and walking up. "Hear what?" she replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Something under the hood. Been happening the last couple of mornings. Probably just needs a belt replaced. You want me to take it in?" she asked, standing and stretching like it was just another day. "You're working double shifts all week, right?" That's when it started. Now, you have to understand, Emily and I had been married for 8 years. We met in college. I was studying mechanical engineering at ASU. She was in communications. She had this way of lighting up a room when she walked in, and I fell hard. Fast forward almost a decade, and we were homeowners with a golden retriever named Max and a 3-bedroom in a nice suburban cul-de-sac. Trust? Yeah, I had it. In spades. So when she offered to take the car to the shop, I didn't think twice. "Yeah, that'd be great," I said, handing her the keys. "Just take it to Walker's. They've always treated us fair." She nodded, took the keys, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and just like that, the fuse was lit, and I didn't even know it. The next couple days passed in a blur. I was slammed at the plant. A new batch of HVAC units came in late, and my team was behind on installs. By the time I got home, Emily was either out with her sister or already asleep. Nothing felt off. Not really. But Friday morning, while I was packing my lunch, I noticed the receipt from the auto shop on the kitchen counter. I picked it up. Auto Pro, East 12th Street. I frowned. This wasn't Walker's. The name scribbled at the bottom under Technician Kyle. Now I'm not the jealous type. I've never been. But something about the way she had casually lied about going to Walker's, it stuck in my craw. That evening, I brought it up. "Hey, why'd you take the car to Auto Pro instead of Walker's?" She was cutting vegetables at the kitchen island. I remember the exact way her knife paused mid-slice. "Oh, they were closer," she said quickly. "Walker's had a long wait. I passed by Auto Pro and figured I'd give them a shot." "Okay," I said slowly. "Everything good with the car?" "Yeah," she said. "Just the serpentine belt. Kyle said it was frayed." He showed me. Kyle. Not the mechanic, Kyle. Like she remembered his name. Like she wanted to remember his name. Still, I didn't push. Not then. But something changed in her eyes. A flicker. Like a curtain had moved behind a window. Subtle, but real. The next week, she was on her phone more. She started locking it when she showered. She laughed at texts she didn't show me. I tried not to assume the worst. But there was a new distance between us, a quiet drift I couldn't explain. Then one night, Max started barking around 11 p.m. I looked out the window and saw a car I didn't recognize slowly driving past our house. Not speeding. Not parking. Just crawling. Like it was looking. I stepped outside. The car was already halfway down the block. But I caught the taillights. I'm good with cars. It was a dark gray Dodge Charger. Tinted windows. Clean. Sporty. Definitely not from the neighborhood. That next morning, Emily was all smiles. She made me pancakes. Played with Max, wore her old college hoodie, the one she hadn't touched in months. The performance was Oscar-worthy. But I knew something was wrong. So I checked her browser history. I wish I hadn't. I didn't find texts, she was too smart for that. But I found a Google search. How to delete call logs on iPhone without spouse knowing. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid there beside her while she breathed softly, dreaming of things I wasn't part of anymore. The air between us was thick with unspoken things. The kind of silence that screams louder than any words. And that's when I decided I'd go to the shop myself. The next morning, Saturday, I drove to Auto Pro. A bell chimed as I stepped inside. Grease, rubber, burnt oil, the smell hit like a punch of memories from my mechanic classes back in college. Behind the counter stood a tall guy with dirty blonde hair, maybe late 20s. Confident smirk. Sleeves rolled to his elbows, showing off some tattoos. "You Kyle?" I asked. He nodded. "Yep. Need something looked at?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "My wife brought in the black Tacoma last week. Just had a couple questions." "Emily, right?" he said instantly, eyes lighting up. That was it. The way he said her name. Like it meant something to him. Like it tasted good in his mouth. My stomach dropped. I stood there, barely hiding the twitch in my jaw as this punk said her name like it was his to say. Emily, right? He repeated, smiling wider like he was proud of himself. Yeah, I said slowly, my voice steady. She said you helped her out. Belt replacement? Yep. Serpentine was about ready to snap. I showed her. We always make sure the customer sees the damage. You know, transparency and all that. He leaned back on the counter like we were old friends. I didn't mirror his casualness. She mentioned anything else seemed off? Kyle shrugged. Nah. We talked a little while I swapped it out. She waited in the shop. Most folks go grab a coffee or something, but she said she didn't mind sticking around. That didn't sit right with me. Emily hated waiting anywhere she didn't have to be. She had zero patience. She complained about standing in a 10-minute grocery line. But here she was, just hanging around a greasy garage while Kyle changed a belt. My fist curled, but I forced myself to keep it cool. She said she got a good deal, I added, fishing. Kyle chuckled. Yeah, well, I gave her the new customer discount. Nice of you, I said through clenched teeth. She get your number in case something came up? The question caught him off guard, just enough for the mask to crack for half a second. Then he shrugged again. Sometimes we give out our card. Part of the job. I nodded. My blood was already boiling. I didn't say another word. Just walked out and got into my truck. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw him watching from the window, smiling. Back home, Emily was on the couch scrolling her phone. She looked up, surprised to see me back early. How was the site? She asked, stretching. Didn't go, I said. Stopped by AutoPro. Her face paled for just a split second before she recovered. Oh, wanted to thank the guy who helped you. Kyle, right? She put her phone down carefully. Why? Just making sure everything checked out. You know me, Mr. Maintenance. She forced a laugh. He was nice. Seemed knowledgeable. Why? I stared at her. Just curious how you went from Walker's is reliable to suddenly hanging out in a new garage for an hour with a stranger. God, are you jealous? She scoffed, then stood up, clearly defensive now. You're reading way too much into this. Am I? Yes, she snapped, grabbing her phone. It was just a damn car repair, not a date. She walked past me into the hallway, phone clenched like it was her lifeline. But she forgot something. She left her iPad on the couch. And thanks to Apple's brilliant syncing feature, her messages were mirrored right there on that screen. I picked it up with shaking hands. The last text on her iMessages read, Kyle, you free Wednesday again? Got a quiet spot behind the shop. No cameras. Winky face. Emily, you're terrible. Maybe, if my check engine light comes on again, smirking face. Kyle, I'll have my tools ready. You bring that attitude. Emily, haha, shut up. You're such a bad influence, smiling face with horns. My throat went dry. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. I scrolled up. The first messages dated back to the day she went in. Kyle, you're too pretty to be wasting time with car stuff. I'd rather take you out instead of fixing your truck, smirking face. Emily, LOL, stop. I'm married. Grinning face with sweat. Kyle, he doesn't have to know. You're fun to talk to. I bet you'd be fun to do more with too. She didn't shut it down. She didn't say no. She said, Emily, you're trouble. And then, Kyle, you like trouble? Emily, sometimes. I stared at that screen like it was bleeding poison. My chest felt like it was splitting in two. 8 years of marriage. All the late nights, the birthdays, the memories, and this was what she did with them? She gave it all away in a damn garage. Not even a hotel. Not even a secret affair in another city. No, she gave herself to a guy with greasy fingernails in a back room behind a shop that smells like transmission fluid. I put the iPad down quietly. Max came and laid his head on my knee. I must have looked sick because even the dog sensed it. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because something inside me wanted the whole truth. That night, while she slept beside me, same soft breathing, same peaceful face, I did what I had never done in our marriage. I followed her. The next Wednesday, I called off work and waited. At 10:34 a.m., she grabbed her purse, kissed my cheek, and said she was going shopping. At 10:49, I watched her car turn into AutoPro. She parked behind the building. I followed from a distance and parked down the alley, out of sight. At 10:58, I saw Kyle step outside. Shirt off. Wiping grease off his hands with a rag. Emily got out of the car and smiled like she was 19 again. Not like the woman who crawled into our bed each night next to me. She walked right up to him. And then, she kissed him. Not a polite, hesitant thing. A real kiss. Hands in his hair, fingers on his chest, like she couldn't get close enough. I saw it all, every second of it. And the worst part? She looked happy. I didn't make a sound. Didn't slam my fists or scream at the sky like in some movie. I just sat there in the truck, my hands gripping the wheel so tight I felt my skin strain over the bone. My wife, my Emily, was kissing another man in broad daylight behind a garage like some high school fling. And all I could think was, why wasn't I enough? The truck's cabin was silent, but inside my head, everything was on fire. I watched them disappear behind the garage, her hand lingering in his. My jaw locked so tight it hurt. My vision blurred, not from tears, no, not yet, but from a fury so raw I could taste it in my throat. I should have stormed out right then, slammed the truck door, dragged Kyle out by his smug neck, and made him eat gravel. But I didn't. Because revenge, real revenge, doesn't come from rage. It comes from control. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. Some cold, calculated version of myself stepped up. The man I was before marriage. Before comfort. Before I started trusting anyone so completely I forgot they were human enough to betray me. I didn't go home right away. I sat in the truck for over an hour, staring at the building, watching the shadows behind the garage doors like they might show me something. But nothing ever came. At 12:21 p.m., she walked out, her hair a little messy, her steps a little lighter, like she'd just walked out of a spa. She didn't know I was parked just a block down. Didn't know her husband saw the way her lips curled into a private little smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. She drove off like nothing happened, like she hadn't just shattered something sacred. That night, I acted normal. She came home with a shopping bag, some lie to prop up her story, and smiled. I smiled back. We ate dinner, watched TV. She laughed at something dumb in the sitcom. I don't remember what. I just remember the sound of her laugh, hollow now, foreign. When she touched my shoulder to say goodnight, I flinched. Not enough for her to notice. But I noticed. She was the same on the outside. But I wasn't. The next day, I made a new email account, created a burner phone number. I started tracking every account she had, Facebook, Instagram, even her Venmo history. And slowly, piece by piece, the image started forming. This wasn't one mistake. This wasn't one moment of weakness. This was a pattern. One night in bed, pretending to scroll my phone while she dozed off beside me, I checked her iCloud backups. Found a hidden folder of deleted photos. My breath stopped. There she was, in our guest bathroom, snapping selfies. Some tasteful, some not. Some where she was clearly wearing nothing but a towel and that same damn smile she used to give me in the first year of our marriage. She sent them to him. Kyle. His number was saved as K. Tune up in her contacts. I wanted to throw the phone through the window, but I just stared. Because now, it wasn't just betrayal, it was a web. A world she had built while I worked late, while I paid bills, while I cooked dinner and thought we were building something real. She'd built a secret life inside ours. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a hoodie, the dog at my feet, staring at the quiet street like it might offer answers. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't going to stop. This wasn't a flirtation. It was an affair. It had depth. She'd invested in it, emotionally, physically, maybe even financially. And the worst part? She didn't seem guilty. She still kissed me in the morning. Still said love you out the door. Still texted me little smiley faces like everything was okay. She was playing a role. And I was the dumb husband, clapping for the performance. But I'm not dumb. And I'm done clapping. 3 nights later, I drove back to Auto Pro. Late. Almost 11 p.m. No one was there. But I wasn't there to confront anyone. I was there for answers. I parked 2 blocks down and walked along the fence line, staying low, hoodie up. No cameras in the back, just like Kyle bragged in the texts. I found the door, rusted, dented, half busted at the bottom. And I found the couch. A dirty, broken old thing shoved behind crates of tools and half-empty coolant bottles. There were 2 coffee cups sitting on the windowsill, a blanket, and a box of tissues, like a setup for a bad movie. A love scene no one was supposed to see. Except I saw it. I took pictures of everything. Every detail. Every stain on the floor. Every stupid love note she had apparently left him. You're my favorite kind of trouble kiss mark, written in her handwriting on a torn receipt. I snapped a shot of that too. Because if this was war, I needed ammunition. Back home, I sat down and made a folder on my computer. Named it Evidence. Inside, Screenshots of messages, pictures from the shop, the text logs, her location history, even a recording I took of her phone buzzing with his name on it while she was in the shower. Everything documented, clean, legal, painful, and I stared at that folder for a long time, not sure whether to send it to a divorce attorney or just confront her with it. Then, I did something I never thought I would. I printed the texts, all of them. I left them in an envelope on her nightstand. No note, no explanation, just the truth staring her in the face. The next morning, she didn't come down for coffee, didn't say a word. I sat in the kitchen, sipping black roast, staring at the wall like it might change things. Finally, she came down, her face pale, her hands trembling. She sat across from me and opened her mouth. But I spoke first. How long? She blinked. I asked you how long, I said, quieter this time, but firmer. Her voice cracked. I don't know. You do. I stood now. You absolutely know. She swallowed. A few months. Maybe more. I nodded. Was it just him? Silence. Then, no. It hit me like a sledgehammer. This wasn't just Kyle. There were others. Names I didn't even know. Faces I hadn't yet discovered. Years of pretending. While I made plans. While I dreamed about kids. While I thought she was everything. She was already gone. And I hadn't even noticed. You'd think when someone confesses to cheating, not just once, but with multiple people, it would feel like closure. That there'd be some finality to it. Some moment where everything makes sense. But that's not how it works. It's more like a dam breaking in slow motion. Every memory, every laugh, every quiet, "I love you," she whispered in the dark now felt like a lie replaying on a broken tape. I stared at her across the table. She couldn't even meet my eyes. She kept wringing her hands like a nervous teenager caught sneaking out, not a 33-year-old woman admitting to wrecking a 10-year marriage. Who else? I asked. She shook her head, tears already forming. Don't, I snapped. Don't cry now. You weren't crying when you were doing it. She gasped slightly, like she hadn't expected that tone from me. And maybe she hadn't, because I'd never been that man with her, never cold, never harsh, never cruel. But betrayal changes people. It pulls some primal, silent fury from a place so deep you didn't even know it existed. I want names, I said. She looked away. Kyle, obviously. Who else? Still nothing. You owe me that much. You don't get to protect them. She whispered something too low to hear. I leaned in. Say it. Greg. My whole body went still. Greg was our neighbor. A guy I'd barbecued with. Borrowed a ladder from. Shared beers with on Super Bowl Sunday. I actually liked Greg. He was divorced. Had a daughter. Always seemed like the decent type, quiet, respectful. Greg. I asked again, needing to hear it just to believe it. She nodded. And how long was that going on? A few times, after his divorce. I felt sorry for him, and don't, I said through gritted teeth. Don't turn this into some charity mission. She finally looked at me then, mascara streaking down her face, her mouth trembling. I didn't plan this. I never meant to hurt you. That line, I said, standing now, that's the one you save for the guy whose wallet you steal. Not the man you vowed your life to. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just walked out the door. The cold air hit me like a wall of ice, but I needed it. I needed distance. I needed silence. I drove. Nowhere specific, just far. Out of the neighborhood, out of the city. I ended up parked off a back road, overlooking a small lake we used to picnic at back in the day. I sat on the hood of my truck and watched the water move in slow, gentle waves, mocking me with their calmness. And I made a decision. This wasn't going to end in chaos. It wouldn't end in shouting matches or courtroom theatrics. It would end my way. Clean. Deliberate. Strategic. When I came home the next day, she was sitting at the kitchen table, still in the same hoodie from the night before, eyes red from crying. I poured myself a coffee. Sat across from her. I'm giving you a choice, I said, calm but direct. She blinked. You move out. You pack your things, and you leave today. No excuses. No delays. You go live with your sister, your mom. I don't care. But you're out of this house by sundown. She opened her mouth to protest. I raised a hand. And I'm not finished. She froze. You don't touch a single dollar from our joint account. I've already moved most of it to my personal savings. I've talked to an attorney. I haven't filed yet, but I will. A pause. I let her feel the weight of that sentence. If you try to contest this, if you try to play victim or spin the narrative, I will bring every piece of evidence to court. The pictures. The texts. The hidden folder. The video. She looked up sharply. What video? I followed you once. Last Thursday. Her face drained of all color. Yeah, I said, quietly. You weren't careful. She didn't say a word after that. She stood up, walked upstairs, and began packing. It was silent, the kind of silence that feels like a scream trapped behind walls. I stayed downstairs, sipping my coffee, listening to the faint sound of drawers opening and closing. Every thud felt like closure. Every zip of a suitcase felt like a chapter ending. At 4:47 p.m., she came downstairs with 2 bags. Her car was already running. She stood in the doorway. I know sorry means nothing, she said, her voice breaking, but I am. I didn't look up. I loved you, she added. I still do. That's when I looked her dead in the eyes and said, no, you loved the version of me that never found out. She froze. And then, without another word, she walked out the door. I heard her car pull away. And for the first time in weeks, I breathed. Not a sigh of relief. Not joy. Just air. Heavy, quiet air. I went upstairs. Opened the bedroom closet. Half of it was empty now. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't healing. This was mourning. Not for her. For the man I used to be before I knew the truth. I spent the next few days in a haze. It wasn't anger that kept me awake at night. It was the numbness. The feeling that something fundamental inside of me had shifted, and I had no idea if I could ever find my way back. Her bags were gone. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I'd expected relief. I should have. But instead, it was emptiness. A silence so thick that even the hum of the refrigerator felt deafening. The next morning, I woke up early. I didn't even have to look at the bed to feel the void she left behind. I went to work, but I couldn't focus. I couldn't sit through meetings. Couldn't pretend everything was fine when inside I was burning with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. The text came first. Her name flashed across my phone. Her number I'd saved for years, the one I'd memorized like the back of my hand. I didn't even have to read it to know what it would say. I'm sorry. Please, let's talk. I didn't reply. But then came the calls. Endless calls. Her voice on the other side, desperate. But I ignored every single one. I needed space. I needed time. I needed to think. But it didn't stop. The relentless pressure, the waves of guilt she sent me. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of her apologies. By the 4th day, I finally cracked. I called her. She picked up immediately, almost as if she'd been waiting by the phone. Hello. Her voice was trembling. She sounded smaller now, not the confident woman I'd married, but a broken version of her, fragile and vulnerable. I took a breath, the words heavy in my mouth. We need to talk. We met at a small cafe downtown, somewhere public, neutral. She sat across from me, nervously twirling a napkin in her hands. Her face was pale, her eyes darkened from the lack of sleep. She looked like a stranger to me now. I stared at her for a moment, just watched her, and I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just emptiness. A void. Finally, I spoke. Why? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. And then, her voice was barely a whisper. I was scared. My eyebrows furrowed. Scared? Of what? Of us, she said, tears welling in her eyes. I thought maybe I wasn't enough. That you wouldn't love me if you knew the real me. So I tried to find comfort, somewhere else. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her words sinking in. You think I didn't love you? I asked, my voice cold. That's what this was about? You're telling me you ruined everything because you thought I didn't love you? She shook her head. No, not because of that, but because I was afraid of losing you, in a way that wasn't about just being with you. I was afraid of losing myself. I shook my head, unable to process her reasoning. So, instead of talking to me, instead of facing whatever it was you were scared of, you chose to betray me, chose to hurt me. Her face twisted in pain. I didn't want to hurt you, Mark. I never wanted to, but I didn't know how to fix it. So I ran away to someone else, thinking it would help, thinking I could forget. But I didn't. I only ended up hurting us both. We sat there in silence for a long time. The weight of her words hung between us. I thought about it all. About how she had tried to manipulate me, how she'd pulled away when I had asked her for help, for honesty, for vulnerability. Instead, she chose lies. And the worst part was that, deep down, I could see the truth of her words, her fear. But that didn't make the pain any less real. It didn't excuse what she'd done. And I knew then, with an absolute certainty, that I would never be able to trust her again. When we finally stood up to leave, I didn't hug her. I didn't kiss her. I didn't say, "It's going to be okay." I just turned and walked away. That night, I went home to the empty house. The house that used to feel like our home. Now, it felt like a prison. I spent hours pacing, unable to sleep, my mind racing through every moment. Every day we'd spent together. Every memory. The dinners. The vacations. The plans we'd made. And none of it mattered now. All those memories were tainted. I called my lawyer the next morning. I filed for divorce. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I thought it would make me feel better. But because it was the only way forward. I told myself it wasn't because of her. It was because of me. Because I had to rebuild. To heal. To move on. The divorce was swift. Quicker than I'd expected, honestly. We didn't fight over money or assets. No bitter exchanges, no dragging each other's names through the mud. In a strange way, that was the hardest part. The quiet finality of it. There were moments during the process when I wanted to call it off, when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. Maybe it was just the grief talking, the aftermath of everything I'd discovered, the lies, the betrayals, the secrets she'd kept from me. But in the end, I realized something that had been festering deep inside of me since the very first time I found out what she had done. I could never look at her the same way again. The woman I had loved, the one I had built my future with, was gone. And the person who stood in front of me now, in the courtroom, was someone I barely recognized. It was the final hearing. The judge asked if we were ready to proceed. My heart felt like stone in my chest. This was it. The end. But when I turned to look at her one last time, I was surprised to see she wasn't crying anymore. The broken, desperate version of herself had vanished, replaced by someone who seemed resigned, almost calm. Her eyes met mine, but this time, there was no pleading, no apology, no "please forgive me" in the air. Just a distant look, as if we had both crossed some invisible line, beyond which there was no going back. The papers were signed. The house was mine. She left the courthouse first, without a word. And I didn't follow. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't feel a need to. Instead, I stood there, in the cold hallway, knowing that whatever future I had left was one I would walk alone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the overwhelming realization that I wasn't angry anymore. Not even sad. I was empty. It took me a long time to understand the depth of what I had gone through. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, nights when I would wake up in the middle of the night with my heart pounding, replaying every moment of betrayal over and over again in my mind. But as time passed, I began to notice something. Something small, but significant. I began to heal. Slowly. Surely. And it wasn't just that I was healing from her betrayal. I was healing from the version of me I had been, the man who had been so desperate to hold on to a relationship that had long since crumbled. The man who had ignored the signs, the warnings, the red flags, because he wanted it to work so badly. I learned to forgive myself. For everything. For not seeing it. For not walking away sooner. For letting myself believe in the lies. Months later, I found myself walking into a new chapter of my life. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was mine. And that was all that mattered. And then, one day, I ran into her. I didn't expect it. It was on the street, an accidental meeting, one of those moments that feel like the universe is testing you. She looked different. Her hair was shorter. She looked more polished, less like the disheveled wreck she had been months ago. But the moment our eyes locked, I felt a familiar emptiness. The old wounds were still there, buried deep. She smiled at me, cautiously, like she wasn't sure what kind of reaction she would get. I didn't smile back. I didn't frown, either. I just nodded. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt indifferent. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but I raised a hand, stopping her before she could speak. "Good luck, Beth," I said. And for a brief second, I saw the flicker of the woman I used to know in her eyes, the woman who had been my wife. But that version of her was gone, just like the love I once felt for her. We both knew it. I turned and walked away, not looking back. And that was the end. Months turned into years. I rebuilt my life, brick by brick, day by day. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And while I may never forget the pain she caused, I realized that the person I had become was stronger than the one I had been when I walked into that courtroom. The scars are still there, but they're fading. And now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the man who was betrayed anymore. I see a man who survived. A man who learned the hardest lesson of all. The end of the story is never really an ending. It's just the beginning of something new. And I'm ready for it.